sweat and splinters. Forest elders breathe their last. I'll bring them for your supper. Every piece of wood I bring carries a story in lichen, fungus, beetles, maze. It's the same to you, all ablaze. When you burn, burn with the light of the morning's birth. Burn, burn with the heat at the heart of the earth. Burn, burn with the light that reveals our faces. Burn, burn with the heat that will warm these places.
The winter means nothing to those who keep moving. The shadows keep plucking. The warm winds are soothing. Each and every day we move farther away from the overflow. Trees made of sugar, they break under pressure, while children tame cougars, they ride with great pleasure. We raise up our closed fists, but we'll never notice the overflow. It's over, the overflow. It's growing in size, but we'll never notice it's gone. The fires are swarming, the faithful are bleeding, the soldiers are storming, the ignorant are leading. All else has failed, so they ride on the tail of the overflow. Monotonous speakers go off on their tangents, while cavemen fight creatures. Who knows where their minds went? Blood and oil spill, but our glasses will fill till they overflow. Fear has risen from its prison. The illusion has been cast. If we don't act fast, we are gone.
Hey y'all, it's Kelly Moody. Welcome to the Ground Shots podcast. Well, it's been a hot minute, as we say in the South, or maybe people say in many places, but it's been a hot minute since I've released a podcast episode. And it's also been a hot minute since I've done one of these intros for the podcast. I was just in Mexico and doing some spontaneous travel. I haven't been out of the United States in over a decade, and a friend invited me to go to an event, and I decided to just go for it. And in that process of taking advantage of this opportunity, I ended up going to visit Samuel, who has been on the podcast a couple times. If you are an avid listener of the Ground Shots podcast, you probably are a big fan of episode number 1, the very first episode that I released. And Samuel is the guest that I featured in that episode, and also in episode number 40, which I did around the beginning of the pandemic. And the first episode I did with Samuel was in person at the Buckeye Gathering in California, the Sierra foothills of California. We had a conversation at dusk on an old pine tree and had a heart-to-heart. And episode 40 was a Zoom call from Durango, Colorado that we had during a really, pivotal moment of the pandemic, coming out of the mass quarantine that everyone was doing around the world into this new kind of era of the pandemic where we're all kind of like, should we quarantine? Should we not? Should we quarantine? Should we not? Should we travel? Should we not? And that was that moment in time. And so I really appreciated being able to go visit Samuel and see where he lives and do a little weaving and walk around the village that he grew up in and get to hike a little bit in the mountains and kind of look at some of the plants that are there and meet Yashi. I think I'm pronouncing it right, the plant for fire that he speaks about in episode number 1 of the podcast, or mule fat as we say in the U.S., riparian plant in the Southwest and in California that grows along water, that is great for a friction fire. So that plant grows right in Samuel's backyard. The first day I was there, I went and had my coffee cacao drink on the roof of his family's kitchen, and I looked out onto the creek and was like, that's the plant. It's right there. I could see it down 2 stories down. Anyhow, if you want to learn more about Samuel's family and some of his perspective on the socio-political dynamics in Oaxaca, I would highly recommend listening to episode 1 and 40 of the Ground Shots podcast. So I was just there, and it was so amazing to be in a desert environment after being in the humid South for a season, which was very difficult for me. And after all these years of traveling in the West, I've gotten used to places that don't mold. I've gotten used to my possessions not molding and what it means to be able to go out into the woods for a while and leave my truck and have my things kind of sitting, and so and also being around less human beings. So it's been quite an interesting season for a lot of reasons, and that's just been one tiny reason. And I'm not going to go too much more into the rest of what's been going on at this moment. I'm just not feeling super ready yet to go there on the podcast. I know that many of y'all are friends of mine or keep up with me more personally, and the podcast is sort of this really interesting place where I'm featuring a lot about what other people are doing and their projects and their perspectives in the world, and sometimes dip into what I'm doing and why I care about what I do and why and what and how and the people I'm collaborating with. And lately I haven't been sure how to speak to what I'm doing and why and how and what, because I feel kind of like a big mess this year. So much has happened, so many big shifts and old traumas and new traumas and things have transpired, and I'm just trying to stick to what matters to me and what I should be doing. I know I should be doing, which is this work right here with y'all. So with all that said, at some point I'll probably get deeper and more thorough with sharing with y'all more of me as the host and editor and curator of this project, where I'm at in the world and what I'm doing and how I'm doing it. But right now, I want to do the thing that's the most easy, which is to be like, well, let's talk about what the guest is doing. And I say that because it really is important what the people who are on the podcast are doing, for one thing. And yeah, again, I'm not ready to get super into me as the host, my world right now. But just know that I'm here and I'm holding this, and I have a lot of things in the background in the works, and I'm super excited to get back to this project and to hold this space to share with y'all. I know so many people have been messaging me the last couple months wondering when a new episode's coming out, so here it is. And this actually was a conversation that I recorded a couple months ago in August in Western North Carolina, Weaverville, North Carolina, actually, with Morgaine Plantwalker. And Morgaine is one of the caretakers of Herb Mountain Farm, which is a farm and kind of nature sanctuary preserve that was originally established in 1970 by Hart, who is her partner, and Hart's family bought it back in the day from another family. And interestingly enough, as you'll hear in the episode, the mountain that's like a big feature of the land that's under conservation under their caretaking, Morgaine and Hart, is called Herb Mountain. And these folks grew vegetables and herbs for years, mainly Hart, and then Morgaine came into the picture, but like they grew herbs and vegetables for sale for a while, and now their land is a sanctuary for plants, and especially at-risk medicinal plants and plants that are at risk because of commodification, capitalism, and overharvesting. And so a lot of their goals now are growing herbs for preservation purposes, for genetic preservation purposes. So in the area locally, Morgaine and Hart are famous or well known for being these amazing people that like tend this amazing place and care a lot about the land and tending this space and this location in order to increase diversity and spread abundance outwards from that place. And so over the years, I've dabbled in visiting this landscape, and Mark Williams, who's been on the podcast before, has taken me there several times to walk the land and look at the plants. So I've been really grateful for being able to see what's there and what they're doing. And this summer I got to go there 3 or 4 times to visit and really get a little more experience walking the trails and their preserve. So this conversation with Mary we did in person, and we sat in the gardens together drinking tea. There's a little bit of creek sound in the background, some chainsawing at some points. I used my recorder that is more of a field recorder, and it can kind of pick up background noise, but for the most part it's pretty chill, the background noise. According to Herb Mountain Farm's website, they say, "We believe that much of the earth has been continued to be abused, disrespected, and pillaged to a point where future life on earth is in great peril, and our mission is to awaken, rekindle, and strengthen the relationship between plants and people while inspiring and fostering respectful planetary stewardship." So Herb Mountain Farm is a member of the United Plant Savers Botanical Sanctuary Network. United Plant Savers is a organization that we've mentioned several times on the podcast, and I will certainly link them in the show notes. I apprenticed for them many years ago as well in Southeast Ohio, and the Herb Mountain Farm land is about 105 acres, and they are in a conservation easement through Southern Appalachian Highlands Conservancy. So it's a protected landscape that these folks tend and hope to pass on to other folks that will tend it in the same way in perpetuity. So according to Herb Mountain Farms website. Again, they say, we don't harvest from the woods, but rather use the abundance of the weeds in the cultivated areas around us for food and healing. Perhaps one day the woods will be thick enough again with the edibles and medicinals that we feel comfortable taking from it. Until then, though, we see the forest as a place to be observed, given unto, with plantings and offerings preserved and appreciated. We acknowledge that the First Nations Cherokees stewarded this land long ago before us, and that our white predecessors stole this land from them. Planting, tending, and protecting biodiversity is one of the many ways that we make amends. And so they have on their website as well a big plant species list that they've been working on, and I'm sure Mark Williams has been a big part of. Again, if you haven't listened to the podcast episode with Mark Williams, I can't think off the top of my head while recording this intro like which episode number it was, but a couple years ago when I visited Asheville, North Carolina, I did an interview with Mark Williams, the ethnobotanist that so many folks in the South and Western North Carolina know is a big part of Herb Mountain Farms' doings and workings, and you can listen to him on the podcast as well. So in this episode with Mary Morgaine, we talk a little bit on the background of the formation of Herb Mountain Farm, the intentions of Herb Mountain Farm, and many of Mary and Hart's approaches to the plants on the land. We speak to plants growing there and their experiments and what they've been doing with different plants kind of in the open, in the field, in the woods. We talk about the nuances around wild foods and the scarcity mentality and abundance mentality. We speak to land tending and caretaking as a kind of activism and using land as a living seed bank to spread diversity and preserve at-risk plant populations. Mainly, it's a conversation with Mary and I in the gardens and geeking out on plants and speaking about the beauty of that land and hoping through this conversation that we inspire you, listener, to tend land in your own way, whether it's private land or public land or something in between, in the way that makes sense where you live. I know on the podcast I've featured people that do work that tends land on public land, and then I've definitely featured folks that do like really small scale tending on like a tiny half-acre plot of land or like a 3-acre plot of land, and do work on that place to try to make bigger effects beyond that place. And so with what Mary and Morgaine and Hart are doing at Herb Mountain Sanctuary, I definitely think it's within that sphere of like creating a space in time that can make good effects beyond that space and time. So I really hope you enjoy this conversation with Mary Morgaine, and it definitely brings back memory of this time in the summertime when everything was green and vibrant and glowing and humid and thick. And though it was like kind of a crazy and intense summer for me being in Appalachia, like not easy whatsoever, I really appreciated this moment with Mary Morgaine in the gardens, and I really hope you find something magical from it as well. So before we get to this conversation with Mary Morgaine, I want to remind y'all that we have a Patreon at patreon.com/ofsedansalt. Patreon is this platform that folks can use to support projects they really love, and this podcast is a project that is funded mainly by contributions by listeners, and Patreon is a way that you can subscribe monthly to contribute financially to the ongoing work of this podcast, which costs money to run. And I pretty much dedicate my entire life and being and doings to this project. So your contributions in that platform basically support my life and ability to hold the space for this project. So patreon.com/ofsedansalt. It's linked in the show notes of this episode. And every episode of this podcast is like one of the primary ways that you could support this work, as well as, making a one-time donation, which I have links in the show notes of how to do that through like the various donation platforms that are out there, like PayPal, for example, Cash App. They're all linked there if you would like to give a financial donation one time versus subscribing ongoing. You can also support this project by sharing any episodes that you come across that you really resonate with on your social media accounts. You can recommend our conversations to people who you feel like might be able to contribute financially to the project, or people who you think would be moved by the conversations that are being had. Because ultimately, I don't do this for money, but I live in a capitalist world like all of you do too. And I need to also pay like at least a baseline set of bills. And in order for me to continue to do this, I gotta figure out ways to do that. So again, anything you contribute is super helpful. So with that, let's just go ahead and get to this episode. Go ahead and listen through the end when you're done with this episode, because I do some credits for the musicians that are featured in this episode, and there's another song at the end that I really love that I hope you will stick through to listen to, because it's been hitting home for me lately. So with that, let's go ahead and get to this conversation with Mary Morgaine Plantwalker at Herb Mountain Farm in Weaverville, North Carolina. Enjoy listening, y'all.
Doug Elliott came and Yana gave him these water chestnuts to give me, and these gambusia, which are mosquito fish. So I put them in here with the water chestnuts and filled it with water and pond muck, and they were like this small. Look how big they are. And the fish have had babies. There's all these fish in there.
Oh my goodness.
I can't wait to harvest it. I don't know when's the time. They surely look ready.
Wait, what is this called again?
Water chestnut.
Oh.
Like the tropical, it wouldn't go through the winter. I don't know what, I gotta call Yana and say, what am I supposed to do? And how do you preserve it so you can grow it again next year? Because I'm pretty sure it would freeze. And will the fish die? They like to live way down at the bottom, but they eat the mosquito larvae, so
A little ecosystem
Totally.
in a pot right there.
And last night in the dark, I came out with a flashlight just to see the things in there. Oh my God, there was so much activity, creatures I have never seen in my life.
Mm-hmm.
It was cool.
Awesome.
That's how I have fun.
Yeah. Well, maybe we could start by, can you tell us a little bit about where we are in the world for people who listen? Because there's people all over the world that listen to this podcast. And like this place and also the greater region where we are, and then introduce yourself and your role here at this place.
We are in the garden in western North Carolina in the Reams Creek Valley watershed. After a tropical storm passed through, the ground is really saturated. It's late August. The bugs are singing. The butterflies are floating by. The grass is really green and damp. The earth is so lush and giving and full of vitality. At Herb Mountain Farm, where I live.
Yeah. Y'all usually call it Herb Mountain Farm, not like Herb Mountain Sanctuary. Is that kind of like the...
Well, the Herb Mountain Farm name came because Mr. Herb Maney homesteaded this land in the 1800s and built the cabin, the original cabin that's on the land, and the mountain was called Herb Mountain. You know, this thing of naming mountains after the white people when they come and take the land. And so when my husband's family bought this land, they were told they were buying Herb Mountain and that property. And so my husband thought it was pretty funny because he grew herbs and vegetables, so he named it Herb Mountain Farm. And that was in 1970. And in the past 7 or 8 years, we've transitioned it to a learning and lodging, well, not lodging anymore so much except for residential, botanical sanctuary. And we thought about changing it, the name, but Herb Mountain Farm had been around since 1970, and it just, we tried it for a little while, and people kept referring back to Herb Mountain Farm, so we just left it as Herb Mountain Farm. But it's more of a sanctuary now in the sense that we don't farm for restaurants and grocery stores and farmers markets like was happening here for decades.
Oh, really? Like vegetables and herbs for that purpose?
Vegetables, herbs, and flowers were grown. This was the first organic farm in Buncombe County.
Oh, wow.
And at the time, there was one other one, the R farm, over in Weaverville, and people thought that Hart was crazy. Hart is my husband, trying to grow food without synthetic fertilizer and stuff. Oh, you must be crazy, you know. How are you going to do that?
Because this was in the 70s when he started doing that, and at that time no one was really
Not really,
doing
yeah.
that as like a mainstream thing.
Yes, yeah. And so he grew just a ton of food and would take it to markets and sell it to local restaurants and sell it to grocery stores. And then he started a distributing business where people would bring, once the organic movement started to grow in the late 80s and 90s, they would bring the bulk of the produce here, and Hart would distribute it in his trucks all over western North Carolina to people who didn't have access to as good of foods and vegetables as organic, fresh herbs and flowers and things.
Wow. So he would sell some stuff and then share it with the extras, or share a lot of it too with people. I mean, I know this place has, I mean, the food bank in Barnardsville is very popular. I mean, there's a lot of people that don't have a lot of, you know, I mean, growing food is a skill that anyone can do, but sometimes people don't even have like the space or resources to even do that. And
yes, yeah, and that is one thing that he and his family always did, was gave a lot and to the Manna Food Bank and to local food pantries, and just a lot of organizations that were in need of different food. The food from this land went all over the place, and fed this family too.
How many acres? So some of it's under cultivation, but a lot of this land is forested. And how big is it?
It's a 138-acre parcel, and 105 of those acres are in conservation easement with the Southern Appalachians Highland Conservancy, which means that you can't develop it, and that it's protected and also available for educational use, and to study and watch and see how the forest restores itself. And also it's our responsibility to steward it and pull out the invasives and work with that, but that's a whole nother story. But and so that I think there's about 20 something acres that are in cultivation here, with buildings and gardens and yards and stuff. It's a lot.
Probably a lot to keep up too.
Oh yeah.
They have like a whole staff or a whole intern system for. I mean, it would be wonderful to come here and intern and probably learn about how to take care of so many different types of plants. Yeah. But yeah, it's a lot of work. It looks like
it's so much work. It's too much work. It's something that this land has taught me to my core, is that you cannot ever own the land. The land owns you. And if you are responsible for something, then it's important to tend it well. And so we do our best, Hart and I, but it's just more than we can keep up with. And we have an apprentice right now who works so hard and is amazing, but it's really just the three of us mostly. We have 2 people who come a few hours a week. But it's just the 3 of us holding down the fort, and it's not sustainable.
Yeah, to hold all that. I mean, it's totally a beautiful mission and worth doing, but yeah, I can. As you
Yeah.
get older, you're like, how much can I hold?
Yeah.
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 Yeah. Well, how did you become a part of this?
That's
about-
a great question.
Yeah.
How did you?
Because you are such an intricate part of this.
Yeah.
Yeah. I know that's a big story, probably, but
Yeah.
that's what we're here for. So.
Well, in 2005, a friend of mine called and said, I'm doing a garlic planting at a farm. Do you want to come help? It was on a Saturday. And I worked at that time as a full-time specialty services person in the school for special needs children, mostly with autism and Down syndrome. And I craved to be outside more. And so I said, sure, I'd love to do something outside. So I came here on a Saturday in 2005 and helped with the garlic crew and planted garlic and met Hart. It was this place, or Mountain Farm. And when I pulled into the driveway, my whole being just felt this deepening or this groundedness, and this voice was like, this is important. This is a significant place for you. And I've been to tons of incredible places, so I didn't really pay that much attention to it, although I hadn't really had that voice come to me before. And as it turned out, I started working here and became like the garden manager. And I let go of my other job. And so I worked here for 3 years with Hart, and at the time he was married to another woman, and they had 3 adopted children that they were raising, who were all young adults at the time. And Hart was my mentor. I learned how to steward earth with consciousness from his tutorials, basically. Just his stories, watching him helping me learn how to do these things, and having the opportunity to apply the things that he was learning. And I had been studying this and doing permaculture type studies for maybe mid-90s. So it wasn't new, but this was the first time I really got to put the blood, sweat, and tears into a piece of land and really apply what I had been learning in my head, aside from my own small postage stamp gardens. And I loved it. It was amazing. It was incredible. And then I quit working here and started my own little business, and went off on another path for 3 years, and then Hart and I reconnected again. And at that time he was divorced and my partner had passed away, and we just started hanging out, and we were always very, very good friends. But he asked if I wanted to date him, and I said, oh my God, you're an old man, like, no way, dude. Like my dad. I see you as a father figure and all this, and I really love to be with you. I learned so much from you. But then he kept asking every couple weeks, because we would have dinner or go on walks, and he's just such a dear friend. And finally I said, okay, I'll go on a date with you. I'll consider that, what it would be like. And I went out with him, and it's like, okay, imagine if he were like my boyfriend, and I realized that age was the only thing that was really bothering me. And I had just had a partner who had died 2 years before at a young age, and I thought, we don't know what's going to happen when. Like, I could die in 2 years, Like, if this is the main thing that is stopping me from being with this person, I'm going to go for it. And so I said, okay, let's date. And we started dating and immediately got super close. A year later, we decided to get married. On our honeymoon, we conceived a child.
Oh, wow.
And now we have an 8-year-old.
On the honeymoon.
Uh-huh.
Oh.
And so in that time, we've been transitioning the land from a farm to a sanctuary, and really wanting to be able to create a place where people can come and see the things that the diversity of what you can grow on a piece of land. So flora diversity is like out of our passion. off the charts. Like, we talk about it, think about it, sleep it, dream it, eat it, everything. You know, what is that? Will that plant grow here? What will it be like? What will it need? What will it taste like? What will it look like? How will it feel? You know, it's just, we're just, in a way, we're like plants ourselves. Hart's more like a tree to me. Just total plant geeks. So creating a botanical sanctuary just seemed a very natural thing to do, and then to be able to share that with others, to come and have a place of refuge, and to be among the things that maybe they read about, or maybe these are plants that they eat or take as medicine, but have no idea where they're coming from, what they look like. Oh, that's what a hawthorn tree looks like? Wow. Like, when I see people meet something that they've ingested or taken into their life for years and years, and it's the first time, it's like I feel like I have lived my purpose. Like, it's the best feeling in the world.
I love coming here with Mark, and he's always like, come see this thing, oh my gosh, and of course spouting out all the numbers. There's this many species here on this land, and this thing, and I'm like, yeah, it's fun.
Yeah.
Going on plant walks with him here, and like,
Yeah.
you know, it's only been a few times that I have, but over the years, but yeah, it's always exciting to see what y'all are trying to create, like even little ecosystems that you're trying to, there's like a little desert patch down there,
Yeah.
and seeing some plants I normally see in the desert, and you're figuring out how to see if they can do it here, you know. It's really cool.
Yeah, we're so blessed to have Mark Williams part of this. He's introduced so many of those species here and helped us plant them, and taught us ones that we could bring in that we hadn't thought of before. Like at the event entrance, Hart said, let's do like a sight gag. Let's do mountain cactus. It's like, what is I didn't even know we could grow mountain cactus. So I started researching in Idaho, a spot that had a similar kind of place, weather as we did, and I found this guy who sold cactuses from there, like tree chala cactuses, and so we made this bed out of granite dust, because this was Hart's idea. We'll just put granite dust down. It'll be like the desert. Well, it turns out cactuses not really like granite dust, but they're surviving. I mean, granite dust is super acidic. Like, nothing really wants to grow in granite dust. But they're growing. They are growing, and it's too late. We've got a whole situation planted there, but it's been amazing to watch them grow and see that they can go down to 0 degrees, these cactuses, and then still come back. And the prickly pear was fruiting a little while ago, and I was down there with Hart, and he just started picking the fruits off and eating them right there. And like, you are so wild. Like, I can't. I have to do it more. I'm afraid of the pokies. Mm-hmm. He had red juices draining all down his face and neck. He's such a wild man.
Mm-hmm. What are some other cool, like, y'all are doing some sort of, are you doing like some tropical plants here too, or like pushing the edge with that as well? I mean, I know with climate change, and like, we don't know what 20 years is going to look like, but I imagine it'll be easier to push that over time, like what can grow here that would be further south or in a warmer place.
Yeah, I want to do more experimenting with that than I have. I mean, we have some things that shock me that come back year after year, like is it the taro root? Taro.
Yeah.
I just thought that would die and not come back, but it's a perennial. Mm-hmm. I don't ever dig it up. And then those canna lilies, I guess. Mm. Those amaze me, how resilient they are here. The bananas, they don't bear fruit, but maybe they will one year.
You don't take them inside them?
We don't do anything with them. The brugmansias, we leave them in the ground.
They don't die back either.
They don't. We mulch the brugmansias.
Mm-hmm.
We grow ginger and turmeric, but we bring that in. We'll put it out. Yeah, the bananas, they just keep reproducing, and they're massive. Have you seen the bananas? Mm-hmm. I've never seen such big banana trees in this region.
And it's not, I mean, you are up on a mountain basically too. It's not
about
like
3,000 feet elevation. Yeah.
It's not like it's a flatlands area where it's hotter. It probably gets kind of cold here. I don't know when your frost-free date is, but yeah, like My parents' place in Southern Virginia is more the Piedmont, and they try to experiment with that. And I'm like, that makes sense. But here, it's even more of an edge to push.
Yeah, it is with the elevation especially. I put San Pedro out because I was like, well, maybe the San Pedro will work because I would love to have a living hedge of San Pedro, but it died. It didn't work. But I'll try it again.
Yeah. See what.
Sacrificed some of my San Pedro for the effort.
Mm-hmm.
But I do want to play more with that. I mean, we have orange tree, lemon tree things, but those we bring into the greenhouse, so they're not officially like just staying out all year to see if it would grow. Like, it has been so dry here, unseasonably dry, and with climate collapse, I think that's just what we're headed towards. Is you don't know if it's going to be super dry, super wet, like you just don't know what you're going to get. But I've fantasized of having olive trees. I don't know if that would be possible. Privet, we have so much privet, which is in the olive family.
Oh, I didn't know that.
Yeah, they're very, very closely related. My partner who passed away, Frank Cook, we took the privet berries and tried to make olives because we were very much into trying to find out what plants can be used here that grow elsewhere that are similar, so that you don't have to import so many things. But we could never get the privet to taste good, the privet berries. But we thought, what if we could get the privet berries to like bear oil?
Start a whole
This would be
movement.
amazing.
Just like kudzu, I feel like there's a movement starting with trying to think, it's obviously very used elsewhere.
Yeah.
Every part of it, the medicine, the fiber, the forage, all of it, Privet's an introduced plant as well, that it's got to be, I've heard it could be good for basketry, for coppicing and basketry. But
Yes, I've heard that too.
And I think it is a traditional Chinese medicine as well, privet.
Yep, that too. But not as an oil yet.
Not as an oil or food, really.
There's a great company, a cornucopia, that's working with all the local trees, the hickory nuts and the acorns and the walnuts, pressing oil, making, trying to bring in more bioregional sources for that. Because even if I am thinking, oh wait, we're eating local, it's like my olive oil comes from California or Spain. Most of my seasonings and things like that, the oils especially, come from so far away. I've not been able to produce those. If we were into growing animals and having livestock, I can see making grease and things, but that's just not our path. That's not where we're at. So we love vegetable oils, nut oils, and would love to figure out how to go deeper with that, but it's like a whole big deal. You can't just do that on the side, like, oh, I'll just make my own oil today.
Yeah, it's like a whole project. Even just to get enough acorns to do that. Yeah. And that is thinking about like how many people there are and how many acorns it would take to do that for everyone in this bioregion. That's definitely a problem to try to get it from a plant source here.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Which begs the question of, how am I eating in a way that is going to be sustainable for the future, and especially with grain. Just having grown buckwheat, having grown quinoa, and wheat and rye, and just seeing how much energy it takes to produce just a couple cups of grain that could make one loaf of bread, in comparison to how much bread we have in our diet and grain we eat with our vegetables and all of that. It doesn't add up, and I don't have an answer for that. It's just something I'm very, very aware of.
Mm-hmm.
And think about often.
I know some places, like in the north, you have wild rice, which is like a very accessible, easy seasonal grain. And it's definitely a traditional food, and, but you could rice for one day and get a pretty good amount, and there's things like that out there. But to drive all the way up there to rice, and of course there's a whole thing around like how much you know, eating something wild every day is it could be as much, it could be dandelion, it could be sourwood leaf. There's so much in the sense of what is wild that you can participate in being a part of the land and the ecology. But I think about stuff like wild rice and how culturally significant it is up there too, and how sensitive that can be. Like, you know, people who aren't native going up there and like, I'm gonna harvest a bunch too, and just like plenty of people do, and it's totally fine at the same time. But I'll often think about that, and I mean, I don't know how to even begin to think about that here in a lot of ways.
Yeah.
You know, but up there, it's a different story, you know. So that's like a whole other layer of like, what can we utilize that's very abundant and isn't something that has had a tradition of use for so long that we don't want to exploit either, you know, but yet still connect. I don't really know what I'm trying to say about it all, other than just thinking
having
about
the
it.
consciousness and asking the question is important. It's the first step. Like, we're bringing awareness to this subject. Like, when I sit down and eat vegetables, rice stir fry, I'm aware that this rice is very labor intensive for the land and the people and just all of the elements, and this is something to be extremely grateful for, to not waste, to not overeat, to not take for granted. And just starting there, I need to eat less of it because I'm filled with so much gratitude already. My belly's halfway full. You know, I think just bringing that awareness is huge, because we weren't raised to really think about all of these things, and so we have to learn and open ourselves up to it. Martin Luther King Jr. said, before we finish breakfast, we've already depended on over half of the world. And if we can just move through our day with that awareness and understanding, like, we're all interconnected at this point, it brings such humble gratitude that it really does decrease the desire and to consume more. You're so filled just by that knowing of connection.
Yeah. It's such a cool space to be able to steward here, where you can eat probably a lot of your food from this place, you know, wild or cultivated, even though to me I think they all kind of blend together, right?
Absolutely. I can't imagine. There's two things I definitely can't imagine. One is life without mason jars. And if I go to somebody's house and they don't have a mason jar, I'm like, how do you exist?
I guess last year people were buying them up. I actually just tried to find canning lids for canning tomato sauce at this Ingles the other day, and they were out.
Oh, really?
I was like, shoot.
Just even jars, glass jars, amazing creation. But the other thing I can't imagine is not eating from the place that I'm on, whether I'm living there, visiting there, passing through. I have to eat something from that land every single day, no matter where I am on the planet. Even if I'm in some polluted, nasty city, I've got to go and find in the street crack a plantain leaf and eat it. And of course here where I live, there's tons of options. So all day I'm nibbling, I'm eating, I'm tasting, I'm smelling, I'm squishing things between my fingers, and then there's the things that we're actually cultivating to eat, and then there's the things that you're just walking by. Oh, let me eat that sassafras leaf. Now I'm one with you. You know, like I really feel like so many people miss out on life by not eating where they're standing, and it doesn't mean that you have to make this big feast or anything. Just nibble even a tip of a maple leaf. It's not poisonous. Like if you're in a park and you live in the city, just put the leaf in your mouth. You spit it out. You don't have to swallow it. It's not very easy to chew, but just connect with the plants through putting them in your mouth. And you receive all this information that's inside your DNA, all the cellular memory, all these things that, how do we think we figured all this stuff out? Through iPhones and books and stuff? No, through being with the plants intimately. And so all that information is still there. It's all inside of our DNA. And then when you eat it, like it gets triggered. And suddenly Like I'll find myself being in places that I haven't been before or that I haven't been in a long time, and consuming something and just being downloaded this information and realizing nobody told me that, I didn't read that, and then looking it up and it being right, you know? It's such an empowering feeling. And I'm not special. It's nothing like that. It's just there.
It's almost like it's ancestral knowledge too,
Yes.
that we have inside of us that we remember, even though we can't all the way intellectually explain it
Yes,
sometimes. You know?
yes.
Like just knowing that you should nibble a little bit of that sassafras
Right.
leaf right now because you need a little bit of that, you know, mucilage or whatever.
Totally.
Like,
And the truth is, no matter who you are, your ancestors not too long ago lived off the land. They didn't have option, you know, and so it's not very far removed from our lineage, that connection to the plants and the fungi and the animals, and so it's there, just waiting to get sparked.
I am nothing without all of you surrounding me, and your energy, it moves inside of me, it flows over me, it builds up in me until that energy's released and your body deceased. And your memory increased till you're everything that moves inside of me, that flows over me, that builds up in me. Yes, you're everything. It moves inside of me. It builds up in me, and it flows over me. I am nothing without all of you surrounding me, it
This land, it's a sanctuary. Is it a United Plant Savers
It is.
sanctuary?
Yeah.
Cool. And
Yeah.
I apprenticed for them years ago at their place in Ohio, and I guess to be a sanctuary with them, is there a layer protection involved, or is it more just like an agreement through them and you get resources from them, or like where the plants are just there as like it's almost like a seed bank or something,
Yeah, I think that it's your mission with your land is to protect plants and steward them, particularly medicinal plants and ones that are native, and be a voice for those plants and encourage them, bring them in, or if you already have them, keep the honeysuckle off of them, keep the blackberries at bay, keep the tree of heavens from taking over them. Introducing them back into the woods, particularly here where the woods were, oddly enough, for cattle. Like why you would put cattle all up in the woods to eat all of the native plants blows my mind.
Was it logged too?
And then logged, and then tobacco grown, and then, okay, well, now it's going to go back into forest. And the forest is like, hello, I'm not sure what's happening. And so being a part of that sanctuary, that agreement is saying that I am consciously stewarding this land to bring in biodiversity, particularly to the plants that were here before we came, maybe not me myself, but certainly my ancestors, and disrupted it all, destroyed it, raped it, pillaged it, and try to repair the loss. Also to spread that word. I think that's a part of it too, is that you want to offer that space for others to come and be enjoying it too. I mean, there's a huge hermit part of me, so I really struggle with it, where I love to write and I love to garden, and I could just be alone, tucked away, and don't want anybody to come see me, walk past, near, anything, but and I just feel like some privileged person who is just hogging all this stuff for myself, and that certainly doesn't feel right. Like it just seems much more in alignment to say, this is a beautiful place, I want to share it with you, like, so that wherever you are and wherever you go back, maybe you'll be really inspired to love your piece too, wherever that is. I mean, I've lived in apartments in my life where I just had a little windowsills, and I had window boxes just filled with all kinds of herbs and plants filling over, and then the walkway into the apartments, I would ask the landlords if I could steward them. Like, there's usually a place wherever you are that you can find spots, even if you don't own the land or the space where you are, to tend it. And sometimes I think all the dozens of rentals that I had over the years, and all the trees I planted and bushes that I planted, knowing that I was going to leave them and investing in it, was Earth Mother saying, giving me this now, and reciprocity for all the things that I put out before, without saying, well, I'm not going to be here long enough. I never had that attitude. It's
not necessarily about ownership, right?
No,
it's about
it's
just giving to the land. And
this tree might make shade for someone in the future. Like, that is so exciting to me.
or fruit that someone can eat,
Yes, so much. I'd say most of everything in my life I am receiving because of what someone else did before, whether it be human, animal, plant. And so that's the least that I could do, is try to create something that can be given and shared with others too. But there's a lot of activity here. It's a lot.
It's like a little community, right? And then there's also an educational center, like Mark coming and bringing people to show them what's going on. We went on a hike up the mountain. Is that also called Herb Mountain, or is that a different name?
You mean up at Onion Rock?
Oh, Onion Rock. Okay.
Yeah, so if you went even farther, that's Herb Mountain,
Okay.
a little farther, like 10, 15 more minutes up above there. But Onion Rock is that beautiful escarpment that overlooks the Reams Creek Valley and the Pisgah National Forest, and has its own endemic ecosystem of plants that is nowhere else on the land here. It's very fun.
Yeah, going up there, and it's like, yeah, the rock creates its own ecosystem, and the
Yeah.
sun right there is pretty hot, and yeah, that's so cool. Yeah.
It really is. It really is. We're fairly close to Mount Mitchell as the crow flies. A friend and I bushwhacked from here to Craggy Gardens last fall.
Oh, from here.
Uh-huh.
Wow.
Yeah, so there weren't trails. We just had a app that she had called All Trails, I think, and we just looked where we were and we could see where we wanted to go. And eventually we hit, I think it might have been the Mountains to Sea Trail eventually. It was an 8-mile trek up and down 4 mountain ridges. It was just so beautiful to see how the different escarpments were laid out all throughout that were similar to the one that we have on our land, and then how it would turn that back into lush forest, and then all the hardwoods, and it was just an amazing hike to walk through that, and so empowering too. I wanted to keep going to Mount Mitchell, but I was too tired. But just to know, okay, so I can walk there from here. It's not too hard. In 4 hours, I think we did it.
Oh, wow.
Yeah.
It really isn't that far. I mean, you probably walked in some areas where there haven't, people probably don't walk that often, too.
Definitely.
Yeah, seeing what's growing there. I think it's often a surprise. Oh.
Yeah, we found this big stand of gentians. Oh, and they were in bloom.
Really?
It was so special. Oh,
That's so cool.
yeah. And then we only passed one person's house where we probably trespassed, but there was tons of poison ivy. And I was like, isn't this interesting? Like, this is the only kind of human thing that we're coming across, and this is the only poison ivy we're coming across, which just is a reminder of how poison ivy is a native plant that sets boundaries and says, you've disturbed this area enough, get the hell back.
I know it affects creatures that don't have a lot of hair on their body, right?
Yes.
Interesting.
Who could that be?
I know, other than humans. And we think that humans are so separate. That's like a narrative in our culture, is humans and nature are separate, which is obviously a new narrative based on Christian, the Bible. Or it's not just Christian, it's a whole paradigm, maybe pre-Christian, maybe...
Domination, to dominate. Let's dominate nature and control it and divide it and all of these things, and guess what, in the end it's not possible.
Like you said, the land in a way owns you, and there's a lot of ways to think about that.
Yeah.
That we wouldn't be able to live without the land, and not all of us honor it, and not all of us can right now in the world we live in the best way we can, but there's so many of us trying to figure out how to do what we can, with what we have. So, do you, a lot of the plants here, you probably do a lot of forest medicinals too in the sanctuary. Those are a lot of the at-risk plants that United Plant Savers advocates for are forest medicinals that in Appalachia grow wild and have a history of being overharvested, or and important medicinals that people need, but like black cohosh maybe, for example, but we don't have enough of it to feed the market for it. And are y'all growing forest medicinals here too?
So the forest medicinals that are growing here are, we've reintroduced some to populations that are already here, just to try to increase the populations.
Cool.
But I guess when I think of it, I don't think of it as we're growing them,
right.
So much as we're protecting them. Tending, because we don't harvest any of the forest medicinals at all, because the forest was so destroyed that anything that takes off, we're like, yes, yes, and taking the seeds and spreading them around. So there's ginseng and black cohosh and blue cohosh and pepsissewa and partridge berry and hydrangea and
Some of those can be spread out past this land, right? I guess taking seeds and putting them back out onto public land, or
yeah, definitely. Golden seal, and in fact, the golden seal seem to have all got removed. So we've been doing the opposite, where we've had friends share seeds from patches that they have and bringing them back in here and trying to reestablish them, so that then we can share seeds to go back out into the community. And trilliums, so many of the plants that would have just naturally been here. Lady slippers. There is still a small population of lady slippers. But I couldn't imagine, like, even ghost pipe, I just wouldn't make medicines of any of them. To me, the medicine is just sitting there and seeing this plant make it. Yeah, just rooting for you. Go for it, especially with the drought that we've had in the woods in the past several years. It's been hard for them to even get enough moisture to do what they want to do, and just rooting for them. Yeah, go for it, spread. There's a Turk's cap lily that just appeared on the nature trail, I guess maybe from a bird dropping a berry or something. And the first year, Mark and I were like, what is that? It just had this one single leaf, and we thought, at first we thought it was a ramp for a second, but then figured out it wasn't a ramp. Like, is it kind of orchid? Then the second year we realized it was a lily, and now it's like 4 feet tall, and Turk's cap lily. It's just, so refreshing to see something show up without us putting it there that used to be there on its own. It's like,
makes you wonder, like, I mean, a bird could have brought it, but what the seed bank of the land holds, it's just waiting for the right
Absolutely.
moment, right?
So true. Yeah, Hart talks a lot about that. He's like, the seeds are all there, they just are slowly being reawakened. They're cautious, they're just waiting to see if they're going to really have a good place to be. And
Yeah. What do you hope for the future of what this place could be, and what do you want it to become, and when y'all are gone and like it's still here and it's been caretaken, and what do you hope for the future of it?
What a great question. Well, I don't know specifically what that would be, but I know energetically, and just a vision that I hold in my prayer every day is that this land will be tended in harmony with all the beings on it. There's so many insects. Like, every day I meet a new insect. And the bird life here, and the wild animals, and of course the plants, the fungi, all of it, that it has a chance to proliferate and thrive and be what nature is wanting for it to be. Health, harmony, whatever that looks like, I don't know. Like, whoever humans can get down with that and do it with all the other species that are already here and are still coming, that's what I hope for this land, that it's just a sanctuary for hundreds of, like, forever. Just protect this place, keep it cared for and loved. Don't poison it, don't destroy it, don't harm it. As far as how that looks, like with that part I cannot wrap my mind around, and I can get really frustrated and overwhelmed because I don't personally need to own a bunch of land. I don't really, that's not something that I seek or sought. It's something that sort of fell in my lap in this situation, and I don't think it's really normal for a person a couple to have 138 acres. It just is way overkill. And so how can this land be in harmony with all the creatures that are here and be distributed as open land for whomever passes through? Like, that would be my greatest wish, for it to be owned by the public, owned in this way that is not owned, but tended and stewarded and protected and loved, and healing. That's a huge part of, and I haven't even said that word yet in this interview, is that this is, to me, is a botanical sanctuary of plants and healing. Like, there's not one person on this planet that I know that doesn't need healing in some form or another. And to have places where you can go and be still and lay on the ground or see beauty or listen to the birds singing, these places are shrinking on the planet, and I want them to increase. I pray that they increase, but in the meantime, to protect those places and hold them sacred and offer them to humans so they can understand what land has to give, how much you're a part of it. It's hard to appreciate and protect something you don't understand.
Mm-hmm.
So that's my vision in like a very vague sense. How that looks, I don't really care. I just want that energetically to be what the future of I want it to be like right now, tomorrow, forever. Pull me out of it, put me in a little cabin somewhere up on the hill, that's fine. If all this can just be protected.
No, private land ownership is this funny thing, like, where it's a construct that we have to live with to feel like we can have a home and a place to be. I mean, I guess home can be a lot of things, but I struggled with that being out west more, where there's a lot more public land, and thinking about like so much work that could be done on public lands that is important, like seed planting or tending and things like that. Of course, the government theoretically owns that land, and they can decide at any moment they don't want to protect it anymore. And in some ways, I feel like private land, which is getting more and more expensive everywhere, almost everywhere, sometimes is almost better to create something that you can have more control over protecting. I mean, and yeah, it's just a tricky thing, because on the one hand, none of us, I mean, private land ownership is just a strange construct.
It is.
Right? And then the other hand, it could be used as a tool too, like you're doing here, to protect or to care for land, or to use it to disperse out past these artificial boundaries of the border of it,
Yes. Like the birds and the insects and the bees and the plants, they don't know where the private ownership begins and ends, and so when you create habitat for those things, they get a chance to keep moving on, keep spreading, and just this idea like that it's my land, I'm a human, it's my land. You're sharing it with millions of species, and I'm not even talking about soil organisms, but hey, try to live without soil organisms. Like, they'll do fine without us, but we can't live a day without them, so it's hilarious, honestly, but it's terribly sad and serious, the lack of understanding of all of that. And but sometimes I just like have this imagining, like, okay, we'll just keep enriching the species here, and they'll just move all out over the valley and spread all out everywhere. And
that's a nice visualization. I haven't thought of it like that in that way before, but obviously it's very obvious. Like, the birds don't see the boundaries, right?
Yeah.
The wind blows.
The seeds get spread, and so then they cut. It's like they don't go along with this construct thing that we have created. And when given the chance, they're naturally restoring land to balance. Mm-hmm. This is what nature does, is finds balance with wherever it's at. We're just really good at disturbing that balance and making up rules, definitions, problems, all this stuff.
Well, is there any last things you want to share about this place and your relationship to it, or anything else before we part ways?
I feel extremely honored and blessed and grateful to have the opportunity to live here and to care for this piece of land. And I know that it's a privilege, and each day I ask for clarity of how to be able to make it of service. Like, how do I give back in a way with all this that I have been given? So much grace. So much grace. And so I'm always open to suggestions, stories, feedback, things of like, how do I reciprocate in a holy way? Because this is such a blessing to be able to live here. I feel so grateful. And I want to do it right. I want to do it well, and share it with others.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
How do people find you? Y'all have a website, and there's like a way that people can see the presence of this place online, right?
Yes. We have a website, or mountainfarm.com, and we were holding events before COVID. We were we have done some outdoor events since then. We're hopefully going to do more events, but we'll see where COVID is headed right now. So coming to an event is a good way to connect here. We have a little plant stand that's in the events parking lot that sells plants and produce and flower bouquets. So you could connect by coming there and then walking the nature trail. But I just always ask that if you want to walk the nature trail, just give me a heads up, because sometimes we have private events where people are having ceremonies on the land. And we have an Instagram, or Mountain Farm. That's all. I never could figure out Facebook.
You don't need to.
Any of the other things. Instagram was easy peasy. And the website is going to be getting a facelift soon, because originally when we started out this project, it looked a little differently and has changed. But yeah, that's probably the best way to connect, and I'm hoping more for ability to do like volunteer days and organize around that, but I'm just wearing so many hats right now that it's out there. It's in there.
Mm-hmm.
In
It'll
process.
make sense
Yeah.
when the time comes.
Yeah.
To have people come out and help out with all the work
Yeah.
to be done here.
Yeah.
Yeah. Well, thanks for sitting down with me and letting me come here, and also just feel the presence of this place, and taking the time was awesome.
Thank you so much, Kelly. I feel very, very blessed to have been asked. Thank you so much.
Hey y'all, you just listened to a conversation with Mary Morgaine Plantwalker of Herb Mountain Farm out of Weaverville, North Carolina. This episode was hosted and edited by me, Kelly Moody, recorded in person at Herb Mountain Farm in August 2021. The opening music for every episode of the Ground Shots podcast is Sweat and Splinters by Mother Marrow. The other music featured on this podcast episode is by Cole Sullivan. The songs in order as they were aired are Overflow at the beginning, Entropy, and The One, which is featured here at the end of the conversation. You can find a link to Cole's Bandcamp page in the show notes, as well as a link to Mother Marrow's Bandcamp page also in the show notes of every podcast episode. And in this episode, you can also find Herb Mountain Farm's website linked in the show notes. And don't forget to subscribe to the podcast on Patreon. That's how we fund this whole project. And through individual donations, and the ways to do that are also found in the show notes. Follow us on Instagram at Goldenberries and Ground Shots Podcast. All right, y'all. Thanks so much for your dedicated listening. Until next time.
Yes, I am your brother. I am your son, and I am your lover. Oh, I am the only one. You picked me off the ground and got me on my feet. Oh, I hope you understand. I appreciate your kindness. Well, it's not too often I can see my hands through all the dirt and blood. I left home on a Saturday. Oh, I thought I'd be gone for a while, but you could see in my eyes, ooh, I wouldn't get further than a mile. Yes, I am
You took the blindfold off my eyes and you made me realize that there's so much more to this life. I am the one that you see on the street. I'm the one you'll probably never meet. But I'm part of you and you're part of me. And I know it's hard to believe. Yes, I am your brother. Oh, I am your son. Well, I am your lover. And I am the only one. All right. Yes, I am your brother. I am your son. And I